Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a Greater Langley Chamber of Commerce Town Hall this morning. It is my pleasure to bring the President and CEO of the BC Restaurant and Food Services Association, Ian Tostenson, is here today. Somebody who I'm a big fan of due to his experience with the Board of Directors and President of the David Foster Foundation, but he didn't know that. I'm a bit of a fangirl. David has an extensive background in the food and beverage industry, spent most of his career as CEO President, successfully growing the Cascade brands, which owned Kelowna Vineyards, Sandhill Vineyards, Burrowing Owl Vineyards, Granville Island Brewery, Grady Wine Marketing, and Potter Distilling. So extensive background in the food and beverage industry. Today's passion is to work overtime to help restore the restaurant industry amid the worst crisis ever. The COVID crisis work has been recognized by the Premier of BC and Lieutenant Governor, and I believe you also sit on the Premier's task force as well.
Actually, Small Business Roundtable, yeah.
Okay, on the Roundtable as well. So Ian, I'm going to turn it over to you after I acknowledge the fact that we are meeting today on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish people in the Lower Mainland, wherever you may be sitting. And I'm going to turn it over to you to give us a bit of a background of how we got to where we are today, and maybe some crystal ball moments about where we're going from here.
Well, thanks. And just I like to sort of kind of weave the story here, but that's really interesting. You picked up the David Foster stuff. That, as an aside, he is. I love him so much because he has done so much for our cause on transplants and raising money for families whose children need transplants. And he's a true Canadian, and he's a truly wonderful guy. He really has had a huge influence in my life in every way. And he's like the genie in the bottle for me. It's not like I hang out and talk to him very often, but I know if I called him right now, he'd take my call. And if I asked him, like I said, I need to meet so-and-so, he'd say, okay, great. It's like that one question you have with David, you can just save it, right? But he has been generous and to British Columbia. So anyways, thanks for acknowledging that. That's really cool. Okay, so here we go. I guess restaurants in many regards can be viewed as the canary in the coal mine. So around March, actually even before that. So I remember in January getting a media call. It was like, hey, what's going on with the Asian restaurants in Richmond? And I said, yeah, I know some of them are closing, and there's been some chatter about, this virus that may be in China. But I think I remember saying, I think they're just being cautious. I think it's more cultural, and so good for them. And then not one of us thought that what's going to happen to us. And no one connected. I didn't connect the dots. No one has connected the dots. In fact, the beginning of March, when this was starting to go down, I remember doing an interview with CBC. Someone got really angry with me about this, but I said, Dr. Henry said restaurants are safe to go to. Just got to do a few little things. And this is before they closed. And but some people, so you could sort of feel the tsunami was starting to happen. And then suddenly, I think it was maybe St. Patrick's Day, was it? Maybe in the city of Vancouver shut everything down. The mayor just arbitrarily said, okay, everybody shut down. And then it was the next day or two that the provincial health officer, Dr. Henry, said, that's it, everybody's going to shut down. The only thing that, restaurants can do are go to takeout and delivery model. And so when you take, and I don't know, the business people on this call, but not many small businesses have any cash to sort of even get through 2 weeks to say, okay, that's great. This was like shutting down. There was no answer as to, okay, we're shutting down for 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years or forever, or we're all going to die. Like no one knew. It was such uncertainty. And as business people on this call know that business hates uncertainty, money hates uncertainty. So that was that. And so our organization, which is, typical sort of, it's been around for a lot of years, and it never, it's always trying to pursue what's right for business and trying to abridge and work with government on the right things. We've done some things, but never and I look back at it, and I'm talking history of the last 3 months, is there ever a moment in time for an organization to truly make a difference? And something and I think it was my past involvement with the wine industry, because we'd had a few crises in the wine industry. And I just sensed that there was going to be a vacuum in leadership. There's going to be a vacuum in information. And it was one business owner from Kelowna that called me, and he and his wife were on the phone together, and he was in tears. And he said, I don't know what to do, but he said, and you'd expect him to say something like, I'm concerned about my business, my mortgage, my family, and how I'm going to pay for my car. It was like, how do I take care of my staff? Like, that was the only question that he wants to know. And by that time, the federal government had just announced CERB, so that happened fairly quickly. So kudos to the federal government for doing that. And we saw that most hospitality owners, that's what the biggest concern was, because, and you sort of connected the dots on how important staff are to a restaurant, because it's hospitality and it's family and it's all those things. So that was sort of stage one. We started to look at what information and what things we could do. So we coalesced around a couple of organizations that we work with, but informally we made it more formal, which was the Craft Brewers Guild and Able BC, which is, they do pubs and private liquor stores in the province, and the BC Wine Institute, my own stomping grounds. And we wrote a letter to the Premier, I think day 2, and said, look, as far as we can see right now, there's no ability for business to pay a lot of things that they're having to pay right now, which are things like the employer's health tax, carbon tax, PST owing, all those different things. And so we used a word that I kind of regret now, which we used, deferral. So we said, can you defer all this stuff? Well, and then we started here for the business owners. Well, we saw your guys' letter, but do you really think we want all this deferred and then just walk back into a big mess if we ever open? And suddenly it's like, okay, now you owe us like $10,000 for all this back tax stuff. So, but anyways, I think the point is that we took that step. Then we started to look, and there's another group that's in British Columbia. It's called BTAP, and this is a government name, Business Technical Advisory Panel. And it's comprised, I think there's 8 of us, and it's the Wine Institute, it's the breweries, and it's the restaurants, and it's the pubs, and so we were tasked about 2 years ago to come up with priorities on liquor regulation reform. So we wrote a report, which is public, and I call it the Hicken report, because he was the lawyer that we worked with. And we made 24 recommendations about liquor policy changes in BC. And the very first one that we put on the list was wholesale pricing for restaurants. So for those that know or don't know, is that restaurants buy at a retail price, the same price as would we go buy a bottle of wine, that's the same price. And we've been working for years on that particular element. So I'm just going to park that for a second. I'll come back to that. But one of the things that wasn't in the report, because we would never anticipate it. So is my wife, Kathy, who's VP at marketing with White Spot, which has been really great learning for me to watch how they went through this. She said to me, if I would have sat in the boardroom at White Spot a year ago and said, I see the risk in the business as this virus. There could be a virus that comes from somewhere. It shuts the whole world down. It will shut our whole industry down. It'll unemploy 190,000 people in British Columbia just overnight. And we may never recover. What do you think of that? They probably would have said, look, you know what, we'll leave the boardroom because that's never going to happen. Well, that's exactly what's happened. Is a $15 billion industry with 190,000 employees, and 90,000 of those are between the ages of 15 and 24. So it becomes that's a big issue when you look at the economy and employment. And you suddenly realize the importance of restaurants. And I'm not just saying this because of what I do. I'm just saying it's that in general, the importance of restaurants from a cultural, community, meeting place, mental health place, employment place, flexibility, all those different things that they offer, we sort of took for granted. And we also took for granted that leading up to the pandemic was a lot of these businesses were already struggling. They were already staggered by the employer's health tax and increasing red tape and regulation and property taxes that were going through the roof in highest and best use and all those different things. So, so when we hit this, we went, I guess you're probably in about week 1. And the one thing that wasn't in the BTAP report, coming back to that, was we said now restaurants were pivoting, and they did it really well. Say, okay, we're going to now emphasize more delivery. So you can pick up, which Dr. Henry didn't really want us out. Remember back about 3 months ago, there's no one around. It was like ghost town. We all were like, so we said, okay, if you can order your food and have it delivered by Skip the Dishes or Uber Eats or one of the third party ones, you should be able to order alcohol from them. I mean, why would you want to go, I need my hamburger, and then get in your car and go to your local beer and wine store or liquor store and buy all your wine? So we, Abel and ourselves on the Thursday phoned liquor licensing in Victoria, and on Sunday afternoon they approved it. So it happened that fast. And normally it would take about 2 decades to do something like that. It would be like, well, we have to study it and we have to look at, impacts and talk to all these different companies, but everybody coalesced. So I think that's a really big opportunity right now for all of us, that there's a lot of opportunity to rethink and rejig and re-engineer all the thinking. And we were really impressed by government to do that. So they did that. But the federal government, then they announced the wage subsidy program, which was really important. And I really encourage everybody to make sure they've taken advantage of that. It's critical for us right now going forward, because without that, and I think for most businesses, over the next 2 or 3 months, it's going to be a real problem. So that's going to be needed. But we went into a daily, so we had redesigned our website, and it just happened to coincide with this. And then we dedicated our website to become the ultimate resource for restaurants to go to, because we did a couple of things which I thought were kind of interesting. We said, when you go to, you search a business and you get a, you get a Google listing, it'll say this business is open 5 days a week from 8:30 till 4. We had it changed. This business is open 24/7. And so we wanted people to know that. And then we published personal cell numbers, email addresses, and we don't have a huge staff. We've got a core staff of 4 people. And we decided as a team to take on leadership. And I said, the opportunity that we have right now, in several years, you can look over your shoulder and say, you know what, I was part of bringing back an industry that was so important. Not, well, we did what we could, but we didn't really know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you know, we have to lead. So we started to lead on information. And then we started to share, like the information share was really interesting, especially with Abel. So Abel would write a daily briefing to their members. And we thought, well, that was really good. So we would just copy and paste theirs, or vice versa. So we stopped the duplication, and we started to get more, more information out, because it's really tough, even for us, and I'm sure for the chamber, to figure out where all this sits and where do you go to. And so we started to translate stuff into plain English onto our website. So whatever the Prime Minister said, we put it into plain English. Same with the provincial government. We didn't want to just simply do links. We wanted to do, here's the issue. If you need further information, go to the link. But a lot of places will just put the links up. You got to go to links and you're still in that same problem. So then so that was sort of March, April. Wow, we're almost in July now. It's crazy. But right? I was like, hello, where's the summer? I was obviously not here today. This was really interesting what happened next. We started to think about, at some point, it looked like, there was a bit more optimism, not a lot, but a little more optimism that, it became apparent to all of us, the chambers of commerces and business sectors, that the economy had to open. I mean, if we didn't open the economy, well, we'll get bigger problems, right? We'll have a depression in our hands. And so we started to look at what opening an industry that was closed would look like. And of course, there wasn't a lot of studies anywhere about that happening.
There's no playbook for anything we've gone through in the last 4 months. Nope.
So we said, well, people, I said, we said we have to sort of figure it out. So we did something that was, was in retrospect was really cool. We got a hold of a big restaurant group in Canada called Recipe Unlimited. They own the Keg and Swiss Chalet and Milestones and stuff. And they had been doing the same kind of thinking. They'd put some ideas together. Because if you think about restarting a business, you've got to restart your employees, your food, bills, whatever you got out there. And it doesn't just happen overnight. So we started to think about that. But then more importantly is that the world around us, and it's still this way today, is so behavior's been changed, and people are a little bit skeptical about anybody, anything, if you're not wearing a mask. We were out last night, and we took a lift downtown, and it was like wearing masks, right? Everybody, all these different protocols that you weren't used to. But so we started to think about this, and then about, I don't know, where we at, June, maybe 6 weeks ago, Dr. Henry said, you know, I'm thinking about what restaurants think about reopening. I'd like to hear from them what their plans are. And that was on a Monday, and by Tuesday morning, we had a full document that had been professionally put together from us that we sent out to 60 people in the industry. So we went to the, you know, the obvious ones, the kegs and the cactus and the white spots, and they went to a lot of independents, and we went geographics, making sure we had representations from across the province. We had 60 people on a conference call on the Wednesday, so within about a day and a half. And we had sent the document to them and said, look, here's how we see this. What do you think? And so instead of saying, well, we're all together now, what do you all think about what we should do here? It was like, here are some very specific directions that we are thinking that we should do and undertake. And they took that document, and the restaurant industry is notoriously very competitive. And it was like a I don't know, it's like a school class, a bunch of kids going, okay, I get it, we're all working the same project here. And they crafted this document over 3 Zoom sessions. So the Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, and it was done. And then we tested it with, we did a really good test. We gave it to Starbucks Canada. The Starbucks North America were looking at how they're going to reopen their restaurants. And we got some really good advice. We could talk about things like masks and people coming to work and obligations and tracking, all that kind of stuff. And then we got it to the government on the Thursday. So in 9 days, we produced a document. And the set point for us was that the Premier, in one of his many addresses, he started referring to the British Columbia restaurant industry, how it, you know, brought this plan, and it was the first plan they'd seen. And so I actually had some organizations phoning me and saying, gee, thanks so much for making it look bad. And so I'm not trying to make you look bad. I'm just trying to help, you know, help our industry with, you know, not me, but our team is trying to help our industry survive or get going here. And then I think the next week we were yet on another call, and I got a call. We went like this, went, hey, Ian, it's John Horgan. I went, I almost said, yeah, I'm Mickey Mouse. Like, I sort of thought, like, why? But it actually was the Premier. He actually called to personally thank us because, and he recognizes the importance of a small business, and he recognizes the importance of restaurants. And the Minister of Agriculture, Lana Popham, was just awesome. The challenges there were interesting because there were actually now becoming surpluses of potatoes in British Columbia because there was no more French fries being eaten or consumed or through restaurants, and all these things from the supply chain were backing up. So there was a whole bunch of reasons from a employment point of view and a food point of view. So I told him that, you know, we wanted to build a plan that he could actually be proud of and travel with anywhere he went and said, you know what, here's how we did this in British Columbia. And that actually, our plan actually did get put into Australia, New Zealand as sort of some resources on how to open. So that was really something else. And I give full credit to the industry because we have some of the best minds in the restaurant industry ever. I mean, all the great brands of Canada were always started here, like the Keg and White Spot and Cactus Club and Milestones and all those brands. And so, and then about 2 or 3 days later, I get an email, and it was like, this stuff never happens, right? So I just wanted to tell you, it was like so cool. And it was like, the Lieutenant Governor wants to talk to you. I went, oh, I'm thinking that's like being called to principal's office. So the next day they called, and I said, you know, Your Honor, it's an honor. And she goes, no, my name is Janet Austin. Call me Janet. And so I just, for her sake, she's the most delightful person. And she's really interesting. She said, we do a lot of entertaining here, obviously not right now, but she said, we're really interested in the blueprint that you guys wrote because we want to follow that, make sure that everybody we bring into the house is safe. she was frustrated because she said it's difficult getting deliveries in her place where she lives, right? Because she's lieutenant governor. They just don't roll in with pizza very, very easily. But she totally got it and said totally, for the small business people or business people from Langley, they totally get the economy. They totally get how important it is. I can't give say that the provincial government's they haven't given us a lot. There's not like bestowed a lot of money. But they have set a number of directions, like around liquor and around patios. We can talk about in a second, to allow business to move faster and freer. And I think as we look down the road, you really do see the the damage perhaps that red tape and regulation actually causes small business, because we don't actually think about it another way. We don't need billions of dollars to bail us out. Just get out of our way. Just like, let us open a patio. Let us have wholesale pricing on liquor. Let us, deliver like all this common sense stuff, and let the business private sector create the innovation and creativity. So that's where that went. And our website, bcrpa.com, became the hub of so you can go there. So that was good. And then, then Dr. Henry decides that we can open up. So this is where we're sort of at right now. So they issue the order of restaurants can now open at 50% capacity. So you'll see in and around Langley last week that restaurants, and it's amazing, again, just a story. I mean, it's not just restaurants, retailers are doing the same thing, is adapting to how they follow these protocols that were written by WorkSafe. Interesting that WorkSafe's protocols are voluntary. I mean, you don't have to do them. I mean, you'd be crazy if you didn't, but it's not like that. They're not like laws and regulations. They are suggestions more than anything else. In our case, the health officer can come in and kind of get a little bit more particular because they can call it as a health hazard, but WorkSafe is just there simply to sort of say, look, here's the things we want you to follow. So in our particular case, it was 50% capacity. So if you had a 100-seat restaurant, then you could only be at, have 50 people in it. And then you also had to make sure that your tables were distanced by 2 meters or just over 6 feet. And you had to create corridors for your servers, and you were supposed to keep, no parties, and it's still the case, no parties no greater than 6. And at that table, leaving a chair so that the server has a place to bring the food. And there's not to be any, there's social distancing for people that were going into the restaurant, people not going to the restaurant. Real visible cues as to hygiene and sanitation. So where restaurants they would do that anyways, but now suddenly you have to bring it to the forefront. So you got to make sure that people actually see you spraying and wiping, and especially when the table leaves and it's cleaned. Protocols around how many people can go to the washrooms. So it's all there. And but the problem with restaurants is that they're a business that makes about 4% before tax profit, and the biggest challenge has been labor costs and their occupancy costs. And so at 50%, it's just like, some restaurants said, I'm just better off to stay closed. There's a big frustration in the industry, and I'm sure for not just the restaurant industry, obviously, on the federal rent program. That's just not working out the way it should be. They put power in the hands of landlords, and some landlords are jumping on it, some aren't. So I hope that the Prime Minister gets this straightened out. We're trying to work with our influence to make those changes. But anyways, the restaurants went ahead and opened at 50%. And then last Tuesday, we were just kind of laughing about, life. Well, something will happen today too. I mean, maybe it hasn't happened yet, but in a couple hours, there'll be another announcement somewhere. And Dr. Henry said, well, we forget the 50% rule. Now all we were worried about now is just physical distancing. So do what you want, but just make sure everybody's physically distant. So what that basically did was, and that's what we wanted in the first place, is that it allows a restaurant to take their capacity now and spread it out. So patios become the wild card here, because if you have a capacity of 100 And you can now say, well, I can get 100 people in here if I can physically distance my tables, which won't happen. But you can still take that capacity out to a patio and spread it out. So you can get closer to, even at 50, when they say 50% capacity, you're probably only really at 30 or 40% anyways. But this will allow to increase that capacity in a safe manner. And where you can't get distance between tables of 2 meters, you can put in plexiglass. So maybe there's someone here that owns a plexiglass company. I'm sure they're doing very, very well. I've never seen so much plexiglass. And that's the reality. So we opened up about 2 weeks ago. And so there's some interesting things at play here. And I don't know about Langley, but so you look at sort of the central hub cities of Victoria and Vancouver, restaurants in those in the city areas aren't doing very well at all because they relied on the business crowd. TELUS building downtown usually scans in about 3,500 people a day, and they're scanning in less than about 300, I think, right now. So when you look at, this is public because you said it publicly, but if you look at Global Restaurant that's in the TELUS building at the bottom, they're doing about 25% of the volumes that they did last year. And that's really unsustainable. That's just like, and not a lot of prospects. Well, certainly not in tourism because of the cruise ships and stuff. And I don't know how many people are going to actually go back to their offices either quickly or in a reconfigured way. So that's a really big challenge because, I frankly don't know where that is. So, but what we're seeing though is that the same in Victoria, most government workers are working at home. But when you go to the burbs, everybody's working out of their homes, and we're seeing restaurants. And I suspect this is the case in Langley, is that the restaurants are doing all right. I mean, some restaurants are at last year's volume, some are tracking around 75%, and the city councils have been very flexible in those areas about patios and working. They're really tuned in a lot more, made it a lot simpler. Coquitlam was a great example. They jumped on it first and said, absolutely, we're going to pay for the patios and just get these things open as fast as you can.
I had the pleasure of going out twice this weekend, actually. I went to 2 different restaurants, and I did take, one said that because they'd been open for takeout and delivery through the whole time, when they opened, it was a storm flood of people coming in. They were so happy just to get out the door for the first couple of days. The other one had not had the pleasure of doing takeout and others, and is finding a struggle trying to get people to realize that they are now open. So it's a bit of a catch-22. I think that those that were able to endure through the first few months with takeout and delivery do have that foothold, I think.
Well, you're right, and I think there was something you said is don't hide your brand. I mean, and some people said I have to keep my brand out there and relevant and serving. And a lot of restaurants pivoted and started helping the homeless and doing meals for the homeless and did some really interesting, really good charity work. So that's so we're seeing that phenomena, and then we're also seeing the issue of masks, which is interesting. So more emphasis on people wearing masks in the city. So when we looked at our 60 people per person panel, they're saying, restaurants downtown Vancouver are more concerned about masks, but in the suburban areas, not so much so. It's a lot less, and if you go to Kelowna, I was just talking to them this morning, it's kind of like, why are you wearing masks? Like, we don't have any problems here. So you have a lot of changes around that. But you know what? When we first thought about, you may walk into a restaurant and see one of your servers in a mask, who cares? And it just become commonplace. People with masks, and some restaurants, I do a shout out to White Spot, they found some really cool masks that's clearer, so you can actually see the person's face. And so again, there's innovation, but a lot of cost because the masks are not cheap. The plexiglass isn't cheap. The restricting the areas isn't cheap.
The extra cleaning.
Yeah.
Sanitizer.
All the sanitizer, all those different things. So now the other element here was, there was some discussion, can we get staff back? Well, staff want to come back because of CERB. Not so much a problem. I think that CERB's going to run out anyways, although I think the Prime Minister did say today he's thinking about extending it again if you really actually can't go back to work, so it might be much more on a higher elevated case level. But No, we haven't seen that problem. I think the servers, of course, the big wild card for them is they can earn up to $1,000, but they also have the ability to earn tips or the whole gratuity thing. So the staffing thing hasn't been a problem. Where I think there's a problem, and we're trying to address here, is in general, what we see is that about 30% of people just say, I'm going to a restaurant, I don't care, I missed it so bad, I got to get out and do stuff. And I trust the industry to do whatever they're going to do, that's fine. No, and then there's 30% that says, yeah, I'm up for a restaurant, but you got to show me, you got to convince me, I have to have more knowledge, what are your protocols in place? And then there's 30%, as the premier said, that are going to live in their caves forever until there's a vaccination. So we're dealing right now with that 30% in the middle and working on a program with the provincial government, which would go, it would be like a self-certification, like you do for a Nexus application, where you certify your current status and your intentions going forward. So you would log on to a website, you would make a bunch of declarations and awarenesses that I'm doing this, this, and this for my staff and my employees and my guests, and then acknowledge it. And then from there, we've taken the WorkSafe, because every business has to have a policy for their customers and their staff. And we've converted that. So you simply just have to fill in your blanks and your information. So now you have the policies done for yourself. And then what we're going to probably end up doing is that we'll send you a package next day, which would give you ultimately a decal or something in the front of your business that acknowledges that this business, and particularly because we're in food, has reached a benchmark that of awareness, and so you can feel safe in here. I think that's going to really help consumer confidence to get people.
That's been our messaging moving forward, is trying to instill, the businesses are doing it right, they're doing what they can, they're getting open, it's reinstilling that customers can come back. So we, as a township, with all of the business associations and ourselves, have actually done that, where if you send us a selfie with your work plan, then we'll send you a poster that you can put in your window and a decal on your website that says you've gone through the process of making sure that you and your employees and your customers are safe. So we kicked that off last week, actually. We're really excited about it. And I'm about to start running around the community next week and this end of this week doing videos at different places that are doing it really well, and sort of to get that information out there and get people back out and out and about, and tourists in your own town as well, because there's not going to be a ton of travel. So we're going to highlight a lot of the different opportunities. I mean, we've got some of the best wineries in BC right here in Langley. So we're going to, and breweries and restaurants and opportunities to get out and about and still maintain social distancing. So that's what we're working on right now.
That program, is it getting lots of feedback?
We just kicked it off with an email last Thursday. So I haven't had a chance to touch base with the team yet this morning, but I know that the township was really excited about it, and they've started some marketing through their social media as well.
That's great. Well, when we get ours sort of figured out, I think very quickly, I'll make sure that we collaborate.
Please do.
The tourism thing is interesting. Kathy and I, my wife, we went to Fort Langley a couple weekends ago, and we went and bought some strawberries. Now, we live in North Vancouver, and so, I think these another realizations, like 10 minutes away from where we live, there's a whole forest out there, and the whole history of how they used to forest, and they built Lynn Canyon and the bridges and stuff. And we've been here for a long time. I've never even considered that. We go, well, no, but we're going to go to Hawaii for a vacation because we know more about Maui and the whales than we do about the trees in our backyard. And then we realized going to Fort Langley, which was just absolutely adorable. It took us 20 minutes or 25 minutes in a whole different world, different restaurants. We got strawberries.
Some amazing restaurants in the fort.
Totally. And so I think this whole intra-tourism has got some big opportunities for people to really explore the province. And I think, and we have to do that for the sake of small business, for restaurants. We were at Whistler about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that worries me because they need tourists. And so they're going to have to, but although I see that the Fairmont's now doing, every second night is free. So you're going to start seeing more, value offerings for us to travel around. Now, you had a bunch of questions here.
Some Some of it we covered off on,
No, we
but
already covered. Yeah, I'm just kind of
yeah,
looking at them here. Yeah.
yeah. So okay, so this is one I threw in there. So what has been the greatest challenge for you in getting to the now?
Um, I think is I think the biggest challenge, frankly, for all of us was working with government to get them to pivot. Government's not set up to be um, respond to crisis. They are there to respond to, and I say this with total respect because you have to have this, but they're just very monotone. They process things. They make decisions based on fairness or add the political side to it. And there's never a sense of urgency. And suddenly now to get them to have to make some decisions and go way outside their comfort zone, and where they would consider to be risky. We know that there's been several or deputy ministers, or a couple of deputy ministers have left, a couple of assistant deputy ministers that have been moved. It's been really, really stressful for them. And I say that in respect because we're throwing things at government right now that are way off. Like, okay, we got to, so then the patio thing was interesting because it would take about 10 years to get a patio approved from Victoria, from liquor licensing. So it goes to it goes to the city of Langley, and then Langley goes, okay, great, we want to see your drawings and how it's going to work, and it take weeks and weeks and some money. Then it's going to go to Victoria for that review, plus, okay, how do we license it? Now, in most municipalities, it's a 48-hour turnaround to say, yes, you can do it on public or private property. And then from there, if Victoria gets that application, they say they'll turn around in 2 days without any inspections. Well, why was that now and not 2 years ago? And so that's, I think, been the biggest challenge. And then trying to, the mayor of Vancouver, he kind of talks fast, but he goes slow, and kind of put politics in it instead of like in terms of reality. So he'd make announcements like, yeah, we're going to do this and this, and people get excited because the business community needs to know what the certainty is. And they hear this stuff, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, well, what the mayor said actually is going to take 2 weeks, or it's not up and running yet and stuff. So all those things. But I mean, I think in general, there's actually one other question, our problem beyond this, which you probably have the same problem, but I think in general, considering it's been 3 months and how far all of us have come through this has been amazing. I think the other challenge is organizations like, the Restaurant Association, the Chamber of Commerce. How do you fund these organizations? Because very difficult. We suspended all invoicing. We have 3,000 members. There's 15,000 restaurants, but a lot of them are very, very small. But what we said was, forget membership. Every single restaurant in British Columbia is affiliated with us. And we'll figure out the funding some other way. I don't know what that is, whether you attach it to some of the fees that restaurants pay to license themselves. I don't know, but that whole model, I think, it's a bit uncertain, but I think we'll figure it out. How about you?
We're just over 1,000 members. Right now, we're just at 1,000. We've had some people have retired through this and just decided to close the doors. It's not been that bad. We are an event-based organization, so depend on because we do monthly dinner meetings at our local casino and other facilities. So those have been taken virtually so that we can still get the information out there. Just this past month, we started asking people for pay what you can versus a flat no fee. And my entire team and I were overwhelmed by the amount of people that were paying $10 and $15 to come to our virtual dinner meeting where we're not actually serving them dinner. So, the response has been great and the information's been really good. I'm lucky that in the Chamber network, we are not heavy reliant on our funding for events. It is part of our budget, but it's not the majority of our budget. Whereas some of the other chambers in the province, they were seeing like they're 50 and 60% event-based. So now it's how do you engage? And we're also seeing that as we're doing town halls and virtual meetings, the uptake is slowing down. People are having enough. And I mean, I've sort of said to my team, we're going to go what we always do. We don't do a dinner meeting in July. And we usually in July, a lot of us take vacation and we sit down and we get ready for the fall when we're super busy. We're going to do the same thing this year. We're going
How
to
many people do you get at your meetings?
our dinner meetings anywhere from on average 100 a month to our Christmas one, we get out 250 to 300.
Yeah. We have a big event each year, the BC Restaurant Hall of Fame, which I don't think we'll do this year because it's use about 500 people. But I say to people, you could do the virtual meeting. You can do virtual dinner meetings. You line it up and say, look, it's $100, and you'll have your meal delivered to you. So we can all have dinner online. So you could go to Skip the Dishes or DoorDash and just have a massive, and maybe you run one restaurant and say, look, we're all going to eat sort of at the same time and drink BC wine. I mean, there's a lot of innovation. I think that's going to need to be there for a while yet until, I can't see the world going back to that old normal anytime soon.
What we've done is all of our members are listed, and some of them are offering a special discount for that one night only, or
that's cool.
So yeah. Little different things for if you want to order in. So we do give that people the opportunity. We highly recommend that they order from a member. But we also, same as you, we are highlighting our members and working with them on various issues. But I mean, if a non-member phones me looking for advice, I'm not going to say, I'm sorry, you're not a member. It's all hands on deck. We've been helping anybody everywhere, working with all the business associations within the city and the township, and working with both the city and the township to reduce some of that red tape, which has been our chamber mantra for years on every level. We were able successfully here in Langley to, and I'm going to say the word lobby, both the township and the city to not go ahead with their large commercial industrial property tax increases for this year.
That's huge. Yeah, it's good.
Both had sort of waited, both were running late on getting their budgets finalized, and both were able to drop. The township did an amazing job of 2, 2, and 2 across the board and left it at that. And they were scheduling a 6, 8 and more, I believe. So we were. Well,
that's a couple of things. Yeah. So one of the issues that we've tried to attack, and not to any success, is the high cost of delivery. So these delivery companies, Skip and Uber, they charge anywhere from 25 to 30% to the restaurant for their services. Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, I think New York, they cap those fees to 15% while there isn't a crisis, because the more we want to eat at home, the more we use those services. They sort of have a captive audience. I don't necessarily believe by doing that kind of stuff, but we try to work with them. So but I think what's going to happen to see local companies maybe developing to pick up the space there. The other one that was curious, and it sort of affected all of us on the call here, was the increase in minimum wage. And it basically was, we were sort of said, look, this is an NDP platform, it was important to them. We had a few conversations and said, look, we supported the minimum wage increase the way it was staged. We agreed to the way it was staged, but we didn't know this was going to happen. So we would prefer if you just put it off for 6 months. They didn't really want to do that. And so in the interest of our relationship with the government, we just decided, okay, fine. If you do that, that's fine, but we've got to make sure we do other things to make up for that. And I think they've been quite good about that. But that was hard explaining that to the business community, because they're sort of like, seriously, can you stop that? Well, we don't have the power to stop it, but sometimes a business owner won't see the trade-offs we try to make in the background for the best interest of the business. So that was a bit of an awkward time. Yeah.
As a network, as a chamber network, we were, again, quite vocal about it. And a lot of, one of our weekly calls, I think 45 minutes of the call, Val fielded questions on why not, and doesn't the minister understand? So that was one of the hardest ones to sort of, quietly say yes. And today minimum wage goes up.
I know, right?
Yeah. But again, that it's give and take. And here's hoping that moving forward, I think the next big one is going to be the tourism industry and the payout after the 16-week layoff.
Yeah.
That's the next big hurdle, I think, for a lot of businesses within the provincial government scope. Is right now, it was originally, if you laid people off after 13 weeks, you had to pay out all the severance and vacation and everything. Then it got extended to 16 week. We're hitting that 16-week mark very quickly. And some of the major tourism industry places, so for instance, one of the ones we've been using is the Sea to Sky Gondola. Mm-hmm. Laid 35 employees 15 weeks ago. Slowly brought some back, but that could bankrupt a company if they have to go back and pay off 75 employees, severance and everything all at once and right now.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, so that's one of the other issues that's come up right now. So are you seeing a strong uptake in sales for some of the higher end restaurants, or are they struggling just as much as the mom and pops?
Yeah, so you're sort of upper casual. I mean, I think that well, White Spot, Cactus, if they're not downtown Vancouver, they're going to be doing just fine. It's harder for the smaller independent restaurants for a couple of reasons, well, three reasons. Number one is they don't have the marketing power. So sometimes people, as you say, they kind of forget them. There is a move, well, no, not a move, but consumers tend to be a little cautious in going to brands that they know and they trust, and they've been around for a while. So that's tough for the independents to do that. And the independents tend to be smaller, so it's tough for them to get the right number of seats. But there's a number of ways that they can deal with this through through social channels and being part. I mean, the strong thing that we don't see living in Vancouver is how strong the communities are, like Langley, and there's a lot of support between local chamber of commerce, which are so important. And so I think that helps those small businesses. I worry in Vancouver there's awful lot of small ethnic-based restaurants that were there just because there's a lot of lunch crowd that just must be just hurting so bad. And I don't think, frankly, they're going to make it. So
and I was going to say that lunch crowd is downtown. There's a lot of restaurants that are only open for breakfast and lunch. They're not even open for dinner downtown. They close up and that's that. They just do the daytime. So that's a really hard one when a lot of people are, I mean, office work wise, but a lot of people are staying in their homes for now. What are some of the new ideas that have been added to the industry that you think will be here forevermore?
So certainly delivery. I mean, that's going to be and so then delivery took on a whole market or a place of its own, where some restaurants did marketplace. So they would sell the stuff that they're buying. So you could buy toilet paper and produce, and then they put together barbecue kits. And some are doing, Father's Days weekends where you can buy ribs and combine it with beer. So there's some really interesting combinations directed to the home user. I think you'll see a lot more, maybe a lot more restaurants doing catering for excess, when they have excess capacity, doing some catering events, small events, obviously under 50. Ghost kitchens are one. So a ghost kitchen is basically one of two ways. You actually go to a common kitchen and produce something and then sell it to the consumer. Or if you're a restaurant, you can develop brands. So you could do Colleen's Burgers, and it might be, might be a branded restaurant, but they set up a whole different branded line of offerings and food offerings, not to compete with their own. So you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to probably see less reliance. I think one of the problems that I see is that less reliance on servers. So what we're seeing now is, you're not sort of being over-serviced by your servers. Servers are keeping their distance. So I think what's going to see now is that, okay, well, how do we take this model and maybe do more self-serve and reduce our labor costs, which is unfortunate, but I think you're going to see that model change out of necessity for both cost cutting and just having less people sort of running around doing that. Let the guests take on more of it. Big trend to local. Local's going to be really important because I think our whole psychology has been disrupted in terms of certainty of supply of food, and I think the provincial government will will really focus on we have a program called Eat Drink Local, which will be expanded across the province. So local food, local wines, and I think that's sort of where it's going to be at and you will see a contraction of the industry. Arguably, Colleen, it might have been too many restaurants anyways. It was maybe a little bit overbuilt. And that's no reasons to sort of justify, well, we just closed some restaurants. There's still people and a whole bunch of implications. And I think the other thing is that you'll probably see restaurants being more inclined to build regionally, like the Browns model, which is more of a neighborhood concept, where you see your neighbors and it's close to home, you can walk there, versus sort of downtown. I think, the tourism effect, particularly in Vancouver and Victoria, is going to be quite devastating for quite a long time.
Yeah, no, I agree. So You touched on it a bit about WorkSafe, and one of the questions on our list was, why do some restaurants enforce staff wearing masks and others are not?
Um, Dr. Henry said they're not necessary because if you're keeping distance, then it's not really. It's I think what she'd probably say is if you're close. We looked at the sort of protests. If people were close, they should be wearing masks. But being that your restaurant can physically distance, they don't really serve a purpose. They do serve a purpose. So when it comes to the psychology of what people see, and I think so, a lot of restaurants are doing it because their guests are feeling more comfortable. And we've had letters from people saying, "Joe, I went to a restaurant, they weren't wearing a mask," and you sort of rate and say, "Well, they don't have to." So it's really being able to read your clientele, whether it's important. And like I said, downtown Vancouver is way more sort of mask orientated than say, probably even in Langley. I don't know. I haven't been to a Langley restaurant since they've opened, but I would say there's a little less emphasis out there than there is in downtown Vancouver.
Okay.
The other one is our gloves. So people go, well, I don't see them wearing gloves, but gloves tend to be so convenient that people forget to take them off and change them. And so they can actually, you're better off not to wear gloves and wash your hands regularly than you are to wear gloves and attract bacteria. They're a bit of a false thing.
I think the best thing I saw was, if you're not working in the medical industry, don't wear gloves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But again, the consumer has having a hard time to go, well, went to a drive-through, they had gloves, and this one didn't have gloves, and this all sort of changed. But again, the recommendation isn't so much to wear gloves.
Some of the drive-through techniques for serving food, passing cards, and doing things have been phenomenal. I love personally the hockey stick's my favorite.
Yeah.
It's truly Canadian when the payment machine comes out on the hockey stick. So
Isn't that something else? Yeah.
some of the innovation's been great. One more quick question before we come to the end of our morning, and we can open it up quickly. If anybody would like to now drop any kind of a question into the chat box, I'd be happy to bring it forward. So you touched on serve, and then you're saying for the restaurant industry not being such an issue, most people are interested in going back to work. So I know as a chamber network, we've been really sort of pushing to let's sort of maybe scale back the serve for those who really could go back to work or are, and increase and extend the wage subsidy longer period to enable businesses to keep it and on a sort of an incline. So, right now it's, if you have 30% in loss, then you can stay on it. Our sort of theory was, let's wean people off of it versus, okay, you've hit that mark, you're off, now you're done, you're floating on your own. Especially coming into what could be the fall, everybody's still talking that we could end up with a second wave. And what that looks like. Is that sort of the similar?
Yeah, we totally support that sort of scaling exercise because I know that some of the restaurants that say, no, I'm not doing so badly right now. Behind that though, they're using the wage subsidy. And so without that, because there's not enough business to support it any other way. So there needs to be a gradual shift and a change. I totally agree. And more to the need, where the real needs are versus the blanket side. But I think the CERB it sounds like it's going to be extended, and I hope the wage subsidies extend. I know it's going to cost us a lot of money, but it's going to even get more costly if our economy can't get back up and growing. So I don't even contemplate that.
I agree. Well, seeing no questions have popped up, I want to thank you so much for having us all out on a Monday morning, first thing in the morning. I really do appreciate your time. I know you're one of the busiest people in BC right now. Like me, you wait every morning for the Prime Minister to make an announcement, and then you start trying to translate and get the information out there, or wait and say, okay, the information's coming because they've been made an announcement, but we have no information.
Well, I know, and I think today will be interesting to see what Dr. Henry, because this is the day where she wanted to see the 2-week cycle to go to stage 3, and so and at stage 3, more travel and hotels and stuff. So it's been an absolute honor to talk to you. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you very much, and best of luck over the next coming weeks. And we're doing our part out here. Touch base with you on the creating trust programs.
Yes.
Anything
I'll circle back so we know where we're going.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ian. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for inviting me. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.